Vinland Saga is my latest obsession. I started this series really nervous that I wasn't gonna like it, and it has become it's on my top 10 series list already. I've read the first 54 chapters, as well as we've been watching the anime adaptation over on my Patreon. We've been discussing the chapters chapter by chapter, watching the anime episode by episode. Obviously that's what you do. And today we are going to be talking about the first arc, the first 54 chapters, the first season. We're going to be talking about this first section of the manga and anime together, and it will be loaded with spoilers, so there's your warning. Vinland Saga is a series that shocked me from the beginning at how great it was and how well it did so many things. It has incredible action, a strong driving plot, and a hard, brutal look at war. We're not following the good guys versus the bad guys. We're just following people in a setting that is brutal and that is hard to look too closely at, and we're seeing how they respond to what's happened to them in life, and just very human reactions. And I think that that's one reason why this series excels so well, is because it's so rich in its characters. Each character, each character is so fully realized, so rich in their individual personal struggles they've been through, personal goals they have, and the journeys they take, and how that has shaped them and how they influence each other. And because each plot point, each thing that happens along the way, because it's so ingrained in the characters, because it all comes from the characters and their reactions to the world and the scenarios put in front of them, because of that, it's so compelling, because these characters are so well realized that I feel like I know them, and each decision they make makes sense for who they are. I'm so invested in the story when the story hits its highs and its lows, when it does the most brutal and painful things. I am right there. My heart is being pulled along with it because I know these people and because I'm right there with them. So the story hones in so closely on the characters, and because of that, that's what I'm gonna be doing in this review too. So the plot is that we're following Thorfinn, a child who was raised by an incredible man, Thors, and who is on this quest for revenge against the man who killed his father. That's the very baseline story that we're following, but it's so much more than that. And we're gonna start by talking about how just Thorfinn's story is so much more. Because it could easily just be a revenge story, which I've read many of and I tend to enjoy, especially if they go a little bit deeper, and the series goes so much deeper. Thorfinn saw who his father was. He saw his morals, and he saw who he chose to be. Thor's saving the slave, refusing to meet the man who aggressively comes into their village to get that slave back. Thors surrenders their livestock for the life of this man, even though he just spent all his energy to resuscitate him, so he knows what kind of physical condition this man is in. He didn't believe in slavery or violence against those in vulnerability, and he modeled that clearly to his family. He didn't believe in war, and he showed that as his village celebrated. He didn't believe in violence at all, and made that clear to his son and to the people around him. He didn't believe in having enemies, and he used his last moments to remind Thorfinn of that. Yet, in seeing his father request an honorable duel and win, and being cheated into a loss, and watching his father die, Thorfinn betrayed those that showed him kindness and mercy. He turns away when the men he travels with commit evil acts. He kills unflinchingly as he works for his father's killer. He becomes everything his father tried to teach him not to be, so he can avenge his father's death. Thorfinn's story isn't just about revenge. It goes deeper into what torments him, the memory of his father and the fact that he's not even following the path his father wants for him, and he knows it. And that haunts him too. He can't stop himself from being consumed by hatred and rage and giving his entire life to the quest for revenge. And it shows this unraveling with the most beautiful artwork, and in the anime accompanied by the most beautiful music. It tells the story of a character who's turning his back on any urge he would have of loyalty, any pain it causes him to forsake what he knows is right, and he chooses the path of destruction and revenge and what he's losing in himself with these choices. It's not just a child and his quest of vengeance, it's what he loses of himself and who his father wanted him to be. And it's not just the story of a boy who aligns himself with his father's killer so that he can earn a duel to take him down, so that he can replicate the duel that his father had and won, and this time he wants to finish it in the same way. It's not just that story. It's a story of a child seeking these things and completely losing himself and completely unraveling. And when he's faced with the end, albeit not the way he wanted, and he's faced with his father's killer's death, he unravels. He completely loses himself because he realizes that this quest for revenge has so overtaken him that he doesn't know what he's supposed to do next. But we'll talk more about that in a minute, because now we have to talk about the other protagonist of the story, the one who is introduced as an antagonist and ends up being one of the most complex characters I have read, Askeladd. From his introduction, simply doing a job that he was hired to do, then seeing what Thor's was worth and asking him to lead his men, to being surprised when one of his men used Thor's son as a ransom, but not backing down, and then giving Thor's honor after he died. We knew from the jump that he was a very complicated character. From his introduction in the anime, from when we first meet him when he ambushes them and is doing his job, doing what he was hired to do, we can see that there's a lot beneath the surface of this character, that there's a lot going on here, and that throughout the course of the story, we're going to be peeling back the layers of a very interesting character. I feel the same way about the way the manga opened, which is the manga opens at episode 7 of the anime, in that scene of the siege, and the same way I didn't know what to think of him in that very, very first chapter of the manga, but I knew that I was about to follow someone very interesting. He spent his adult life searching for a substitute of the Artorias of the myth that would bring a new era of peace. Askeladd was a man who had the ability to tell what kind of person someone was just by looking at them, and he asked Thors to lead their crew because he knew that Thors could bring peace, which was what he wanted as a boy who grew up the son of a slave. Askeladd was a boy that loved his mother and tried to avenge what was done to her by killing the one who brought her to that point, and lived on trying to protect Wales and put a good ruler on the throne. He was cunning and smart, and he could assess any situation and figure out the best plan to move forward. He was merciful and kind to his men, putting up with Thorfinn's insubordination and entertaining his duels, and yet coaching him to be better and stronger and sparing his life each time. But he was also a man that killed liberally and turned his back when his men raped and pillaged and murdered for fun, that stole from an entire village to feed his own men, then slaughtered them all in cold blood, all the while telling them why what he was doing was a mercy. What he said was true. They would have starved or frozen to death if left to scatter or to band together to try to survive. And he didn't revel in those murders. He really was choosing what would be the most merciful end for these people, but he's the one that put them in that position because he stole unjustly from the vulnerable, from those more vulnerable than him. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what's right, it's about what can help him to accomplish his goals. It was an incredibly difficult scene to read and to watch, but I appreciate that the story isn't trying to paint the heroes of war and the villains of war. It's just showing characters that we follow, whatever that looks like. It doesn't try to make Askeladd the hero who sacrificed for his country. It tries to make Askeladd the man who sacrificed for his country, who was not a hero. But I love that. I love characters that don't cleanly fit into a box. I love characters that aren't just straightforward and easy to define. I love characters that make you say, I'm rooting for you one minute, and then the next, hang on, I could never stand behind you on this. I love characters like Askeladd that can justify and rationalize and talk his way around any decision he makes. He'll kill someone or torture someone and all the while tell them why what he's doing is right. And we, the readers, have to step back and we have to decide what we think, because we're not following the heroes. Anyway, that was really off track. Back to what I'm trying to talk about with Askeladd. His power of analyzing things is also a really interesting part of his character. His ability to, in any situation he's in, to see what's going on, assess it, and figure out what the best plan of action is next in order to continue to accomplish his goals. It's his intelligence and his strategic mind that took him to this end, realizing that in order to protect Wales, the king must be killed, but the prince must not be associated with his murder. So he pretended to go insane and killed the king and everyone in his way. And I loved that the people that traveled with him understood him well enough to be able to say, he's saving the prince and he's saving Wales by pretending to be insane, and they knew what they needed to do too. And it's Askeladd's end, not just this part, his sacrifice for Wales and his sacrifice for the prince and his sacrifice for the plan that he truly believed was best. It's not just this, but it's also his final moments with Thorfinn. Pretty early on in the story, the story did an excellent job of showing how much of Thorfinn's person he was sacrificing in his quest for revenge. It did a great job of showing how much he was surrendering of himself and what he was taught by his father and what he wanted, especially that scene in the fire where he betrayed the woman that saved him. Man. It did such an excellent job of showing the pain of how he was fracturing himself in order to go after this quest for revenge. And very early on, I started thinking to myself, when he accomplishes this, because I thought that he was going to be the one to kill Askeladd, because this story is constantly taking twists and turns that I am not expecting. It does not do the standard storytelling things that it should be doing, and it's better for it. Anyway, I kept thinking, okay, so when he finally does this, when he finally accomplishes this, when he finally kills Askeladd, what's going to be left of him? What's he going to do with what's left of his life? I don't think he's thought about that. I don't think he has a plan. And I think he's gonna unravel. And I didn't expect it to happen so soon. I totally expected Askeladd to last a whole lot longer than he did. But in this scene, when Thorfinn isn't the one to kill Askeladd, and he unravels because he didn't get to avenge his father's death, because he wasn't the one to do it, but also because the thing that he has fractured himself to accomplish is over now. And what's he supposed to do now? The thing that really shocked me, a lot shocked me, absolutely everything that happened in this ending sequence of this arc shocked me, but the thing that really shocked me about Askeladd, the individual, is that throughout this entire series, he has justified and rationalized every despicable thing he's done. And in this end, he could have said, do you know what? I was hired to kill your dad. Floki or Folky or however, the guy with the rectangle face. He could have easily said, he hired me to do it. He's right over there. Shift your vengeance. Askeladd could have so easily shifted blame off of himself in his final moments, and that would have been in character for what he's been doing up to this point. But instead, we got to see, in my opinion, in my interpretation, what was in character for his heart. Because through this entire story, we haven't just seen this dynamic of a man or a boy who's joining a man's who's aligning himself with a man so that he can avenge his father. We've seen a really unique bond form between them despite the hatred, despite the agendas, despite one of them using the other and one of them wanting to murder the other. We've seen a relationship form between them. And in the end, instead of Askeladd doing what he always does, which is rationalize, justify, shift blame, instead he dies the villain in Thorfinn's eyes. He doesn't say, Go find your vengeance over there. Instead, he challenges Thorfinn. Instead, he uses his dying words to challenge that he's never built a life or ambition beyond this. The man that could justify any crime, that could shift any blame onto anyone but himself, that can talk around any choice he makes, could have shifted blame onto another, but instead he dies the villain so that the boy can move on. He's an incredible character. And what's wild is I've spent the majority of this video talking about 2 characters, but this series has done such a phenomenal job of building up the side characters with the same level of depth. Like Thorkill, a warrior who believes that how you fight and how you die is what matters, who seeks out the greatest battle, the greatest opponent, and will change the tides of his alliance depending on his whims, who honors a true warrior, and he's haunted with the questions set before him by Thor's. What makes a true warrior? He's lighthearted and happy and seemingly a very simple character, but he has a high value for honor, and he understands when it's time to stay seated and let someone else take the glory. And then he holds him up so he doesn't ruin what's been sacrificed. I could spend just as much time in this video talking about so many side characters like Thorkill, like Thor's, Leif, Ragnar, Thorfinn's sister, whose name I don't know how to pronounce. All these characters who are so complex, who have their own journeys that they've got. My golly, Thorfinn's sister barely got any chapters, but I could do a whole video on her. In just 54 chapters, it built up 2 really fantastic lead characters as well as a slew of side characters that are so well realized on their own, that have so much complexity and depth to them on their own, that support the story well, but that also could be their own protagonists. My one complaint is with Canute, and I like Canute's character. Please don't come after me. You know what? Come after me. It's fine. We're all gonna have different opinions. My one complaint is with Canute. I like him, but he's the one character that his development didn't work for me. And the reason is because, okay, I've been told by my patrons that the rapidity, the abruptness of his change bothers some people. The abruptness of his change doesn't bother me. I actually think it works quite well because Ragnar was like a father to him. In fact, he says that he wishes Ragnar was his father. He was the one that raised him in a world where he had to stay silent and stay quiet and stay out of the way to survive. He was valued and cared for by this one man. And he was cared for on such a deep level. The way Ragnar loved him and treated him was beautiful to watch. And when Ragnar dies, when Askeladd orders him to be killed, and Canute is left completely alone now. He has people around him, but as far as people who truly care for him, he's alone now. That's a pretty massive thing for a kid to endure. That's a pretty massive change. And for him to have a very abrupt shift in worldview and in who he chooses to be in that moment totally works for me. The thing that didn't work for me about it was the monk's character and his speech and everything. I'm really just not jiving with the monk at all. But the monk's speech to him, basically in the midst of this tremendous pain, the monk says, Ragnar didn't love you. That's not real love. That's discrimination. I have a lot of thoughts and I could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I'll keep it real simple. When that scene happened, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna judge this scene until I see more because I gotta see what's gonna come of this. Because I expected his character development to have more to it than it did, but instead it was really just a shift. It was just, I was shy and terrified of speaking and nervous and trying to hide because that's instinctually what I've taught myself to do to survive. And now I'm a bold, strong leader. And I'm fine with the shift. I'm fine with the change, but I expected him to wrestle a lot more because the person who he's considered to be his father figure his entire life, he's now been told that his love for him wasn't real love. And on top of that, his faith that he's had his entire life is being challenged. The things that the monk told him makes him question God's goodness and makes him shift from wanting to pursue God's salvation to pursue creating his own paradise for people, because how could God make us pursue something impossible to attain? And all these things. And I was just waiting for him to kind of wrestle with some of these things, especially since the things that the monk told him aren't biblical. Like, they're not biblically sound. That's not what's in the faith that Canute practices. And so I was waiting for Canute to say, to wrestle with this, to say, but I think Ragnar did love me. I think that was real love. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was discrimination. Maybe what the monk said was true. And oh man, what the monk said, it really is challenging what I believe. But that's not what I've been taught my whole life. That's not what I've been taught love is and how accessible love is. And like, I was waiting for him to wrestle with these things because he was being directly challenged on things that he has believed his whole life, and he doesn't wrestle. He just says, all right, fine. I believe what you say, monk. And then he just shifted all of his mentalities. And so for me, I'm actually really, really cool with everything that happened as far as the pacing and the character thing, except that I just wanted him to wrestle with it. I wanted him to go back and forth. I wanted him to really struggle and to spiral and to be challenged by what the monk said, but to not just be like, okay, I guess that's my new truth. Anyway, let's move on. So even though I struggled with the way the change was done, with him not wrestling with it nearly as much as I think that he should have. Even with that being the case, I am very interested to follow Canute moving forward, because I think that he's positioned in a really interesting place. Because everyone is a slave to something, and now he wears the crown. And if I had it to predict, I'd say that he's on his way to a corruption arc, or at the very least, the spiral that I was looking for when he shifted everything he believed. Maybe the spiral is coming now while he's on the throne. Because it's very likely that a man who was raised in a very simple way, instead of raised to become the next king, is gonna have a really hard time knowing how to rule well. He's probably gonna make a lot of mistakes. And we've seen how cold he's become. So I'm interested to see him ruling from this position and seeing what kind of leader he chooses to be. I could see him either having a lot of struggles or ending up being a really bad leader because of this extreme shift he's had. I could be totally wrong. This is just me throwing ideas out into the world, only to have them crushed when I keep reading. This is a series that has taken me on so many twists and turns, that has shocked me around so many corners, that has such rich, well-defined, well-realized characters. It's a series that has a ton of action, that has a ton of hype moments, that has me rooting for a character in one minute and wanting to stay very far away from them in the next. It has this stark look at war that stares unflinchingly at it. Doesn't try to romanticize it, doesn't try to glorify battle. It even takes a character that believes in the glory of war, who's struggling with this concept of, but what is a true warrior? Is this not a true warrior? By the man who forsook these things, who gave up these things. It's a story that takes these individual struggles and quests and beliefs and it examines them from many angles. It's a story that's so beautifully drawn, that's so beautifully told, that has so many layers and so much emotion to it, that is truly become an obsession to me. So let's move on. Let's talk about what we're gonna do next, because I'm gonna keep reading. It's just a very good story. However, my plan at the moment, my tentative plan at the moment, because I make these videos so that I can chat with people about what I'm reading, I'm considering just continuing to read on and continuing to discuss it on the Patreon like I have been, but not making another video until the second season is out, and then we'll discuss the second arc. Because I don't really know how many of you are anime only, or how many of you do read the manga. So let me know. Actually, I would really, really love it if I could kind of gauge what y'all's interest level is in me continuing to talk about this series, I'm gonna keep reading it no matter what. But as far as making videos, dedicated videos on it, let me know where you stand. Are you interested in chatting with me after season 2 is out? Are you interested in chatting with me right this very moment? I'm gonna keep reading regardless, but let me know what you want video-wise, and you know, I'll gauge the interest level and move forward. But what I can tell you is I love this series far more than I expected to. I actually only picked it up because my brother really likes Vikings and I thought this would be a great series to get him into, and he refuses to read it or watch it. Not mad about that, but whatever, I got to discover one of my new favorite series, so I'm not that mad. Please continue to chat with me in the comments. Who's your favorite character in the manga? No, who's your favorite of our main characters, and who's your favorite side character that doesn't even get that much page time that you love? Because there's gotta be one. There's gotta be one, because these side characters are so well realized. Let me know your favorite scene too, your favorite part. Just talk to me about this series. I just really love it. Anyway, I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the second channel, which will be linked in the description. Check out my Patreon if you feel like it. That's also linked there. We talk a lot, and we're not quite done watching the anime of season 1 together, so you can join us and finish that out too. We're about to start reading Full Metal Alchemist together. We'll be reading the next arc of this together. Just, you know, fun stuff. I'm really excited to continue chatting with you about this in the comments. I will see you again soon. Bye.